All right, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and I like to think of myself as a punctual guy, but who knows? We'll get started. My name is Chris Unterberger. I'm one of the co-presidents for the host of this event, Catalyst for Science Policy, or CaSP as we call it. CaSP is a graduate student and postdoc group that focuses on science policy. If you want to learn more about us, we'll post some links into the chat that you can check us out on. I'm glad we could all come together. It's raining really hard in Madison, Wisconsin right now, so I'm glad we don't got to go outside. But luckily we can have this virtual science fair. The event was supposed to be physically held at the Madison Children's Museum as part of their Adult Swim series, but unfortunately this pandemic has forced us to pivot to a virtual event. The Adult Swim series replicates the swimming pools back in the day when children were forced out of the pool and adults were allowed to take over. The series often has a theme such as like Harry Potter or Star Wars, even a science fair. But there's always one thing that they have in common. They serve adult beverages. And I'm not gonna let that tradition die just because of a pandemic. So I'm drinking a nice cold beer tonight. And if you are of age, I encourage you to. Anyway, so for tonight, we have some at-home science portions that'll run from 6 to 7 p.m. You guys will see 3 different research groups showing off their science in fun ways. Then we'll have a couple science trivia sessions from 7 to 8 p.m. and again from 9 to 10 p.m. Sandwiched in within there is a science policy panel that runs from 8 to 9 p.m. We'll be talking to 3 experts about how to use science to inform policy, and especially with these controversial issues that are going on right now. Before we head into our first session, I'd like to thank Research America for providing us the funds to make this event possible, the Children's Museum for helping us plan this event, and all the CaSP members who helped organize the event. One reminder before we start, if you haven't registered a team for trivia and you plan to attend, be sure to do so. We'll post some links in the chat to register for trivia and instructions on what to do during trivia. And there's also a post-event survey that we'd be really grateful if you can fill out after the event. We'll post a link into the chat as well as a follow-up email for that too. It includes an opportunity to help a UW-Madison social scientist conduct some research with a one-on-one interview about this event if you so choose to do that. Anyway, one lucky survey taker from that will win a prize as well, so it's a little bit of incentive. All right, now let me introduce our first at-home scientist. Dr. Jim Madsen is the executive director at the Wisconsin Ice Cube Particle Astrophysics Center. Today he's going to coach you on how the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory detects cosmic messengers. Take it away, Jim.
Okay, now can you hear me?
You
would. Okay, great. All right. So this is an actual picture from the South Pole taken by one of our winter rovers. I'll say a little bit more about what that means, but when the sun sets about mid-March or so, there's roughly 6 months of darkness, and there is a sector that they try to limit the amount of light. Any light that's there is red because the cameras can be less sensitive to the red light than white light. So that's why this building here, which is the Ice Cube Laboratory, looks a little red. So let's see. So what do? We're looking for the source of these extremely high energy particles that are coming from outer space. We've known about these particles for almost 60 years, and up until very recently, we've had no idea where they're coming from. They can produce 1 million times more energy than the best we can do with the most powerful accelerators we have on Earth, right? So there's a picture here of the Large Hadron Collider that's in Europe. And so our quest is to try to figure out where these particles are coming from and how they get to such extreme energies. And if you have a puzzle that you can't solve, one approach is to start looking in new ways. So this is one of my favorite pictures. And it's actually a video, it's been made into a video. This is the Hubble Deep Space image. And what they did is they looked for almost 2 weeks, I think 11 or 12 days, at a spot in the sky that previously was thought to be empty. Each one of these smudges is actually a galaxy that contains 10 to 100 billion stars. Okay? And so there's about 3,000 galaxies in this picture. And there's about 11 million of these grids it takes to cover the sky. So that's why it's so hard to find where these particles are coming from. The universe is huge, right? And there's lots of places that this could be happening. So,
hey Jim, before you talk about this slide, would you mind changing your display settings so that it's full screen for our viewers?
okay, yeah, did
It's
I
at
click
the
on the
top
wrong
of
one?
the screen.
Yeah.
You just need to reverse them.
Sure, okay.
Thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, yep. So.
Oh, wait, now we can't see it at all.
Yeah, I turned it off.
Oh, gotcha.
So, close. Is that better?
Okay, if you take your mouse to the top of your screen, there's a thing that says display settings.
Okay.
With an arrow. If you click on that.
For within, yep.
Yep, within PowerPoint. You should be able to select the other option.
Okay. And what do you want me to select within PowerPoint?
It was on your presenter view that you were just on.
Okay. Slideshow. So is it still coming out backwards?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about this. Let's try share screen. Screen 2. How about now? Any better?
Beautiful. That's perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so what's a telescope? This is a physicist's view of astronomy, so very basic. There's something way out in space that we're trying to find. It's so far out, it's so extreme, we can't visit it, we can't reproduce it in the laboratory. So the way we have to learn about it is it has to send something off that we can measure. And what our telescope is something that can detect that. We would like to know where these messengers are coming from, maybe how much energy they have. Some things are what we call episodic. They happen and then they, like an explosion. So we might want to know what time did we see it, and then maybe what type of messenger. Okay, and so the reason we need to look in different ways is because what you see depends on how you look. So these 2 images at the bottom are familiar, right? That's your hand, and that's what your hand looks like with an optical camera. And you wouldn't be surprised to say that's also a hand on the right there with an X-ray. But what's kind of amazing to me is on the left, that's a picture with an optical telescope of the Crab Nebula. On the right, that's actually the same object taken with a telescope that can see X-rays. So you learn new information if you look in different ways. So what we're going to do is try to look with the most difficult particle there is known that we can try and detect, which is called a neutrino. So the question isn't whether these neutrinos exist. They're probably, besides light, the most abundant particle in the universe. The challenge is that these neutrinos almost never interact. You have something like 100 trillion neutrinos going through your body every second right now. And in your lifetime, 100 years, you'll maybe capture one. So in order to do this type of science, we needed to build the biggest science instrument ever constructed. And we did that at the South Pole. We didn't do it alone. There's about 53 institutions here, about half in the US, and then you see Japan, New Zealand, Korea, Sweden, Switzerland, United Kingdom, right? And then Germany, Denmark, Canada, Belgium, and Australia. So just a zoom in there. This is what some of the people look like. So you see that we kind of look just like regular people and having a good time, right? I was asked to say a little bit about the work at the South Pole. One of the crazy jobs we have is we hired 2 people to spend 13 months at the South Pole. So they went down in about November. This is John and Yuya, and they will come back next December. They'll spend 13 months. They'll overlap 1 month with the next winter rovers. The last plane left about mid-February. The next plane will not show up until about the end of October, or almost the end of November. So you need to be able to deal with isolation in order to survive down there. So there's some pictures of them at the South Pole, sitting outside the Ice Cube Laboratory during the summer months, and there's the Ice Cube Laboratory under auroras. Okay, here's a picture of me and an undergraduate student at the South Pole. I've been to the South Pole 4 times, and one time took a trip just and worked on the coast of Antarctica. Just to give you a feel for you know, what it looks like when you're actually working down there, there's actually not much there aside from the stuff that people are working on. And when they're down there working, they're not really doing what we call real science. It's usually physical work or construction. So here's the group that was part of a team that was drilling holes in the ice for an experiment. Okay, and here's, again, gives some idea. The plane here is an LC-130. That's the main transportation and cargo link from the coast of Antarctica. So how do we find these neutrinos? We have to put a grid of light sensors in a clear medium. The first people thought of doing this in water. Francis Halsen at UW-Madison actually got the idea of doing this in the ice at the South Pole. So we made the biggest science instrument. We drilled holes 2,450 meters down and then instrumented the bottom 1,000 meters with 60 light sensors. The distance from one hole to another is 125 meters. You can kind of get an idea of the scale from the Eiffel Tower here. So I won't go into the detail, but just again to give you an idea of the scale. Here's downtown Madison. Basically, the detector would cover this whole area. So this is what it looks like. An invisible neutrino comes into the detector, and boom, it interacts there, creates a charged particle that goes through the ice that gives off light. And we have these very sensitive light detectors in this grid. And from that pattern, we try to determine which direction and how much energy, and if we can, what type of neutrino it was. Here's another example. This is what's called the downgoing one, because it starts from above the Earth and goes in towards the center. So if you're standing at the South Pole, this would be coming down, right? And then here's a third example. This one here is a different type of event. See how the light started right here in the center and it's kind of going outward, right? So that's called a cascade event. So we have tracks and we have cascades. You're going to need to know that because we're going to have a quiz here at the end. Okay. So what does Ice Cube see? What we see is this light that's given off by neutrinos that interact. Most of the neutrinos go right through the ice and make no signal. The unlucky ones knock into a proton or a neutron, create electrically charged particles, and they give off the light, and that's what we record. So the sequence tells us the direction the particle is going, the amount of light that we see tells us the energy, and then the pattern tells us what type of neutrino, which physicists give the whimsical name flavor. So there's electron neutrinos, muon neutrinos, and tau neutrinos. So on the bottom one here, this is a track, right? Red is where the first light was detected. Blue was the last light, okay? This one here is a cascade event. The light starts in the center and kind of goes spherically out. And this one here, we won't talk about so much, but that's what's called a double bang or a tau neutrino. So I won't say a lot about this because we have a little trouble getting started here, but everything we do is oriented relative to the South Pole. So a downgoing event, right, goes from the outside in towards the center. And so if I was standing at the South Pole, it would be coming down into the Earth. An upgoing event, believe it or not, there are particles that can come all the way through the Earth and go out, would then appear to be coming through the Earth and coming out into the sky in the southern hemisphere, okay? So that's what we need to know. Downgoing, like this into the detector, upgoing starts from the center and goes out, okay? So this is the golden age of astrophysics. So many exciting things. You maybe have heard about gravitational waves and these mergers of black holes, but the IceCube neutrino project is a similar accomplishment to those. Really exciting project to be involved with. And it's the synergy between science and technology that drives this progress. So we make progress in science that enables new technologies enables us to do better science. And it's always this quest to understand the unknown that keeps us going, right? So now what we're going to do is see if we can make sense of some IceCube data. So we're going to go stop at this screen share, and then if I can do this right, we're going to go and try and get my, let's see here, yeah, IceCube particle ID. All right, and are you seeing this screen now? Okay.
Yeah, that looks great. If you don't mind just scrolling down a little bit so that we can see the full event take place.
All right. Yeah, let's see if I can figure this out, how to do this. Is that better?
I'm afraid it hasn't moved on our end.
Okay. Yeah, on my screen, it's not.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. So here's our deal. What we're going to do is show you some events, and you're going to have to tell us, do you think this is an upgoing track, right? A downgoing track. So remember, at the bottom here, this is, so upgoing would be starting from the bottom and going up. Downgoing would be starting from the top and going down. Then a cascade, remember, is the one that starts at the center, central ball of light and goes out. And then it's possible, sometimes we get two tracks of light going through at once. So we call that a coincident event. So what I'm going to do now is actually let this guy run. So let's see, reset counter. I don't know what happened to my.
Do you want me to wash these off right here?
Yeah, let's see. Why isn't it? I'm not sure why we don't see that. All right, I'll just do it manually and go through here. We can spin around and look at the event. Let me just see. Now we've lost the event, right? I'm going to go back here, share my screen again, and then okay. All right, so you can see the time evolution as we go through here. So I'll give you a moment to try and submit an answer. Our choices are upgoing track, right? Downgoing track, cascade, or coincident event. Okay. Have we gotten some answers? So good, we've got 56% who say upgoing, some downgoing, cascade, and coincidence, okay? So let me see, I'm gonna say, I think it's an upgoing. We'll see what we get. Upgoing is the winner, so that's great. We'll try one more and then you can let me know if we want to go on. There we go, now the play is in. I don't know why that didn't play. So here we'll show an animation. And we can actually look at it from different directions. So sometimes it helps if we go and look at it here. Okay, go ahead and submit answers for this one. All right, cascade is 59. All right, I think that's the right answer. So let's go back up here. Correct. More than half of you are astrophysicists. Should we try one more and then we'll move on to the next presentation?
One more sounds good.
Sure, we'll do one more.
Okay. There we go. Oh, this one's a harder one. All right. I think I know what it is though. I'm going to say upgoing. All right. So you can see it's not trivial, right? And it turns out the computers are pretty good at doing most of these, but they can get fooled. For a long time, if there were 2 tracks going through, that was difficult for us to do. We can now do that, but if there's 3, it's still very difficult to write an algorithm that will pick those out, but you can do that by eye. All right, so I hope you learned something new and you got a chance to be an astrophysicist.
Right on. Thanks, Jim. That was awesome. I love the interactive event maker. Oh, it's so pretty. Anyway, that was great. I loved it. I love all you guys are astrophysicists. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna plug a reminder before our next presenter to register for trivia. If you haven't done so, there's instructions in the chat. But our next presenter is Dave Bloom, who is the Patent and Trademark Resource Center representative for the UW-Madison campus. He works with inventors and entrepreneurs throughout Wisconsin. So let's hear what he has to say about patenting new inventions. Let's hear what you've got, Dave.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'm going to put a couple of links into the chat right now. This is going to have to do with an activity I'm going to introduce later on. And that's also going to be posted into the Facebook page for any folks that are following along on Facebook. So, lost my video. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and you should be seeing my agenda right now. Is that correct?
Yep, we've gotcha. Thanks, Dave.
Excellent. Okay, so number 1, I want to talk about why I, a librarian of all people, am going to be explaining patents to you. What is the connection there? I want to talk about what patents are, and then I'm going to introduce the activity I mentioned, where you're going to be submitting your own patent application. Originally, we had planned it for trivia points, but that's actually not going to happen this time. It's instead just going to be for adulation and a valuable prize. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about libraries and the PTRC program. As mentioned, I'm a science and engineering librarian at the University of Wisconsin, and we are also at Steenbach Library, the host of a PTRC location, a Patent and Trademark Resource Center. And so these things are tied together. First of all, UW libraries, there are about 30 to 40 of us, depending on how you define what a library is. I work specifically in the science and engineering libraries, which include Steenbach Library, which covers life sciences, agriculture, engineering, computer science, and a few other things. There's also the new AMP library, astronomy, math, and physics. There's a geology library, and we also have a librarian working out of the chemistry building. We serve campus, we serve the public. We don't discriminate. We want to see people from the public come in, especially for the Patent and Trademark Resource Center program, of which I'm a part. So what that is a long-standing USPTO, U.S. Patent and Trademark Office program. It started in about 1871, and it involves about 80 public, academic, and special libraries across the country. And originally the idea was these were going to be the libraries that housed printed patents. So the patents would go out, they'd have to be made available to these libraries, and people would be able to come in and see them and do their research that way. So it was a natural fit for libraries. At a certain point, the patents became available electronically online, and so it kind of stopped serving that purpose. But we still serve a really important purpose in that patents are valuable information resources, and they're really crucial to understanding and getting your own patent. And so it's really important that people know how to navigate the patent infrastructure. They know how the process works, and they know how to find previously existing patents, because it's really crucial that you understand what came before, because that's always crucial in terms of figuring out what comes next. So first I want to talk a little bit about intellectual property in the United States, because patents are one of the main types of intellectual property we have. Patents are an exclusive right granted to inventions. These are products or processes that provide new ways of doing something or technical solutions to problems. So one of the really crucial things about patents is that they're an exchange. So to get the exclusive right that you receive when you get something patented, which allows you to prevent others from making or manufacturing or selling the product that you've got the patent on, is that you're exchanging all the information, all the technical information that informs that invention, like all the thinking that went into its development, how it works, and how it's intended to be used. So all of that stuff you have to disclose to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office prior to be getting granted a patent. So it's this really crucial information process too. It's not just a matter of the exclusive right, it's also a matter of writing out your patent application in a way that makes it readable, makes it something that someone else would be able to use. Because the thing about patents is that they expire at a certain point. 20 years is the max typically, but they can expire in less time depending on how you pay your fees, if you don't pay your fees. But the idea is that we want people to be able to reuse ideas. We don't want them to be patented forever, because the whole idea is to encourage innovation. We want to encourage people to innovate, and to do that, we're giving them an exclusive right for a short period of time. The other kinds of intellectual property in the US, copyright, that's legal protection automatically provided to creative works. Trademarks, words, phrases, logos, shapes, colors, sounds. My favorite is sense. There are a couple of trademarks that actually protect sense associated with goods and services. And those specifically are to decrease likelihood of confusion when you're purchasing something in the marketplace. And then finally, not finally, but one of the other big ones is trade secrets. And this is business information for which confidentiality is key to maintaining the commercial value. So this is something that you would never register. It's not something that's given automatically exactly. It's something that businesses have to engage in to protect. And then ultimately, if anyone ever lets loose with whatever it is went into the secret recipe, so to speak, you can take them to court under trade secret laws. So like, if anyone ever leaked the KFC secret recipe and they had a legitimate access to the original recipe, and it can be proven that they shared it illegally, you could go after them under trade secret laws. Some of these require registration, some of them don't. Patents require registration and a kind of big review process. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. So the types of things that you can get patented in the US, there are three main categories. There are utility patents, design patents, and plant patents. And utility patents are by and large the ones that you think of when you think about patents. There are inventions, the processes. So the four main categories, and this is going to be important for that activity I'm going to introduce in a little bit. Machines, so things consisting of parts that perform functions. manufacturers. These are things that have been given a new form, a new quality or property, or a combination through man-made or artificial means. They're compositions of matter, combining two or more substances, including gases, fluids, solids, powders, genetically modified microorganisms. And then there are processes, which a series of steps or acts to be performed to produce a given result. And this also includes innovative uses of existing inventions. So if you've got like two inventions that are previously patented, but you figure out a new way to combine them together, that might actually exist under like a process that could be patented. The example I have on the right up here is a, I don't know if you can all see that. It kind of depends on where your window is set up or if my face is blocking it. That's a double piano that's actually been patented by WARF, Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, for a researcher at the UW who came up with this idea. Design patents cover ornamental designs. They are non-functional elements of an invention or non-functional designs existing in and of themselves. So if you have a really cool design for a shoe, you're not going to be able to patent the functionality of a shoe, generally speaking. Most shoes kind of function like shoes, but you might be able to patent the design around it. So the example to the right is a welding jacket, like a fancy welding jacket. The functionality of it wasn't patented because welding jackets pretty much work the same way, but that design with the ridiculous flaming skull or whatever it is on it, that was actually, that was patentable, that was patented. And then finally, there are plant patents. These are asexually reproducible plants, excluding edible tubers and plants found in an uncultivated state. So there are requirements on what you can patent in terms of plants, at least under a plant patent. There are other ways to patent plants using utility patents and such. There are three main criteria that the US Patent and Trademark Office looks at when you submit a patent application. This is in addition to the fact that they're going to look it over and make sure that you've disclosed adequately how the thing works. They want to know that you actually have made it so it works, and they want to be able to make sure that someone can duplicate it. But the three criteria they're looking at in addition to that are usefulness, novelty, and non-obviousness. Usefulness is typically where the bar is set very, very low. They want to make sure that whatever it is that you'd like to get patented actually works in a real world scenario. So this example that I've got here that's flickering on the screen, that's a back padding mechanism that actually has been patented. It doesn't have to be that useful, is the point. It doesn't really have to be anything that's going to change the world necessarily. It just has to work. So something that wouldn't qualify would be something like a time travel machine, unless you're able to prove within the documentation that you've actually been able to make it work. Novelty and non-obviousness is where the bar is set much higher. And this, what enters into it at this point is what's called prior art. And what prior art includes is basically everything in literature and basically anything that's existed that's been publicly disclosed prior to the point that you've applied for your patent. So the Patent and Trademark, the US Patent and Trademark Office examiners are going to look through tons and tons of literature. They're going to look through US patents, US patent applications, international patents, and international patent applications. And they're going to try to find precedent for what it is that you're trying to patent. So they want to make sure that you're not duplicating ideas too closely. They're also going to look at scholarly literature. They're also going to look at Amazon.com probably, see if that product has been made available somewhere else. They're going to look through basically everything they can get their hands on to see if there's something that anticipates what it is that you want to get patented, including anything that you yourself have put out there. You yourself can actually disqualify yourself from getting a patent if you disclose something too early in the process. So they're going to be looking at novelty, which means they don't want anything that too closely anticipates what it is that you've come up with. So I've got what I think is a pretty novel invention here. This was patented. It's, I forget what exactly the technical term is, but it's clearly a butt-kicking machine. And non-obviousness, it's kind of the same idea, except here is where they start looking at combinations of things that were in existing patents. So it may not be that they may not be looking at it in its totality, but they want to see that you've taken disparate elements from previously existing inventions or what have you, and put them together into a new surprising format. So the example I have on the far right is a rock, paper, scissors card game. So they've taken these two different ideas, rock, paper, and scissors, and a card game, and they put them together into something that's at least a little bit surprising, a little bit non-obvious, and they fulfill the required criteria. So here I'm going to introduce the activity, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it as we go. But basically, you're going to be submitting a patent application for something that you've invented during quarantine, or whatever pops into your head tonight or while you're doing this. What I'd like you to do, if you'd like to contribute to this, is complete one of the forms that are linked in chat and on Facebook. and include a visual depiction. So there's going to be a way to upload this through the Facebook or the Google form that I've created. And if you don't have a Google login, I've given you an alternate version. And the workaround there is you're just going to send me, I have my email address on the form, the design itself, and I will put together the application for you. So why? So respect and adulation of your peers, for one. You're going to get your very own PDF of a fake patent application, which is kind of cool. And you also get the chance to win a valuable prize, which is one of our Steenbach cows. It's a squishy cow. It's pretty cool, very coveted on campus. So you'll get one of those if you're the winner. Here are the guidelines. The invention must be patentable matter, but we're going to take a very simplified approach to this. So what I encourage you to think about are machines, manufacturers, processes, compositions of matter, and ornamental design, since I think those are things that maybe are somewhat doable within the context we're working in. Maybe not composition of matter so much, but that would be cool. Unexpected but celebrated. If you can come up with an asexually reproducible plant in the next 10 minutes or so, or during the course of the evening, that would be awesome. I'd be really impressed, and you'd pretty much win for sure. What are not going to be allowed are works of literature, music, film, or visual art, because those are covered by copyright. Logos or jingles, those are covered by trademarks. Secret recipes or proprietary algorithms, which would be covered by trade secrets, or laws of nature, abstract ideas, or inventions designed specifically for the creation of nuclear weapons, which are actually called out in the examiner's manual as not something that you can actually patent. So don't do any of that stuff. The invention also has to meet the 3 criteria, but also a really, really simplified version of that. Usefulness, we don't have to lower the bar that much. The thing is, you don't have to prove to us even that it'll work. Just that it feasibly could work, even if you haven't figured it all out yet. In terms of novelty, it's just got to be novel to the best of your knowledge. We're not going to be checking against any prior art. We're not even going to be taking a look at Amazon to see if there's anything out there that completely anticipates it. And for non-obviousness, pretty much the same deal. There's some loopholes you can use in designing your inventions. Safety is not required. The US Patent and Trademark Office does not review for safety. The patent over here on the right is actually a patent for a centrifugal birthing device, and it looks terrifying, and I can't imagine that anyone ever used it, but it was patented. They don't look at safety, so we're not going to either. The actual patenting process takes years. We're only going to be taking a few minutes, and when I say we, it's going to be me and a few of my colleagues from the libraries. Some general advice. Your submissions, including your name, are going to be shared via Zoom and Facebook, but you can withhold those on the form if desired, or you can use a fake name. But I really want to encourage you to share them because I think it'll be fun, and I want all of your colleagues to see what you come up with. Don't submit anything you'd actually like to patent, because this would count as public disclosure, even though it's kind of a sealed off world we're in right now. It's still kind of a public disclosure, so don't really show us anything that you'd actually like to patent. We're also easily amused. Silly is awesome. We encourage full silliness. And to give you an idea of what we mean by silly, here are a few examples that my colleagues and I have come up with. So we've got a multi-holiday celebration ornament. So it's an ornament that can be used over and over again for multiple holidays. We've got a pedal-operated faucet for home use. So you can use hands-free operations of a kitchen sink faucet. You can save water by requiring constant pressure. I imagine you get a little exercise also by using the pedals under the sink. And then I came up with a thong mask. Since you've got to look stylish, you've got to get your tan, even if you're wearing a mask for COVID protection. This is a really good solution. And again, the US Patent and Trademark Office doesn't review for safety, so I've taken full advantage of that. And then finally, I want to leave you with my contact information. Ultimately, we want you to go to the libraries, especially if you're a UW affiliate, but otherwise too. Our website is www.library.wisc.edu. To get in touch with those of us at the science and engineering libraries, you can get in touch with us at askcell@library.wisc.edu. And then finally, my contact information is down here at the bottom. My email address is also going to be included with the forms. So if you have any trouble uploading your submissions to the forms, just please let me know. And with that, I'm going to take a look and see if any questions have come up during the point where I was, during my presentation here. It doesn't look like it. I guess I didn't really ask for questions, but does anyone have any questions off the top of their heads?
You can add your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
And since Chris mentioned what he was drinking, I should mention that I'm drinking a Fernet and ginger ale out of my patents mug. So, oh, good. How long does it take for a patent to be approved? It depends. It can take years. It typically takes a few years because of the review process, and the examiners kind of have to get done with their work. Sometimes it can take up to 10 years and stuff if there are extensions and weird things going on. Out of curiosity, why can't you patent nuclear weapons? I don't know. It's been, I assume because it's dangerous, but the US PTO doesn't accept those anymore. They don't accept anything that you're going to patent that could create a nuclear weapon. Can you patent genes or DNA sequences? Yes, in some contexts. Yeah, you actually can. And actually, there's ways to look up sequences depending on the patent database that you're using to run your searches. My favorite part of the job is actually meeting with people about patents and trademarks. I like all parts of my job. Like a lot of the science and engineering questions I get are awesome too. But I really love sitting down with people to talk about the inventions they've come up with and the trademark stuff they've come up with. It's really fascinating work, and it's super entertaining, like almost all the time. But it looks like I'm at time, so I'm going to. Oh wait, why do the sharks on Shark Tank reference patents all the time? Because it is a good thing to go forward and get a patent before you actually put something on the market if you want to protect it. Otherwise, someone can copy your work and monetize it, and you're not going to be able to stop them. Shark Tank, incidentally, has brought in all kinds of folks from the community who are interested in patents and really haven't gotten to the point where they actually should be patenting anything yet. So it's kind of the bane of my existence a little bit, even though it does bring folks in, which like I said, I like, but it gives people kind of the wrong idea about patents a lot of the time too. But with that, I should kind of conclude to make way for the next folks. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. That's awesome. That was a good presentation. I'm going to come talk to you soon. I got this idea for a automatic bottle opener for my beer, to save the hands, but I'll talk.
Awesome. Yeah, my contact information is on the form too, so if you participate, you can say you want to get in touch with me. So
no participating in this because this has to be on the low. This is a super secret invention. But anyway, another plug to register for trivia if you haven't done so already. Links are in the chat. I'll introduce our next presenters, who are Mariama Carter. Forgive me if I pronounce that name incorrectly. Connor Hendrich and Katharina Wigg. They're all graduate students in the plant pathology department here at UW-Madison, and they're going to explore what is eating your plants. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, hello everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Just have a couple slides to show you. Okay, hope everyone can see that. But welcome to Science at Home with What's Eating My Plants, or WEM. We are a science outreach organization here at UW-Madison, founded and led by graduate students. And we're just a collection of passionate plant nerds who are really interested in bringing education in plant sciences and plant science and plant pathology to the youth in Madison and beyond. So my name is Mariama Carter, and I, along with Connor Hendrich and Katharina Wigg, are going to teach you how to grow some plants at home, hopefully using materials that you may already have. And we're going to teach you how to grow microgreens, onions, and lettuce. So we'll do probably 15 minutes of demonstration, and we'll hope to leave 5 minutes or so for questions at the end. Q&A.
Hey, Mariama, would you mind trying to move your mic a little closer to your mouth? We're having trouble hearing you.
Is that better?
That is better. Thank you so much.
Okay. So microgreens, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So microgreens are plants that are grown intentionally and harvested at a young age when they're still seedlings. And I'm sure, as many of you may have noticed, in these past few years, microgreens have become a craze, and they're rather easy to grow at home, especially since they are harvested young, so they don't take much time and don't take a lot of input. So hopefully you all have gotten the chance to look at the materials beforehand and can follow along with us as we do this demonstration. So what you need for chia microgreens, which is what I'll show you today, is a plastic container with a clear lid in which to grow the greens, a paper towel, which will just act as the substrate which the plants will grow on, some chia seeds, and water. And I just got chia seeds in bulk from the grocery store. So what you want to do first is put your paper towel at the bottom of the container and saturate it. And I just use a spray bottle for this. And once you've saturated that paper towel, you can sprinkle your chia seeds on top. And try to do kind of an even layer and well dispersed so that the seedlings are not too dense, because that can lead to rot. So a relatively even layer of seedlings, or seeds, excuse me. And then a couple more sprays for good measure to saturate the seeds. And you can cover that and put it into a dark, humid area of your house. For me, that ends up actually being my oven, but not on, obviously. And that darkness will kind of simulate, the humidity and darkness will kind of simulate the environment that the seed would like to grow in. And after a day or two, you'll see the seeds germinate and start to sprout into a little baby root coming from that seed. That's what kind of looks like day 1 or 2. Now around day 3 and day 4, the seedlings will have produced the cotyledons. Cotyledons are kind of a technical term for leaves that were inside the seed already. And so when they first emerge, they'll be yellow since they haven't gotten to the point where they produce chlorophyll. But when you put them in light, they'll produce that chlorophyll and be green and photosynthesize. And that's the point in which you want to then put your seedlings into a light source, whether that be a grow light or the sun. And then after maybe 9 or 10 days, they look like this. And this is the stage in which you can harvest them, eat them, and use them in your favorite recipes. I think the easiest way to do it is to be to chop them off at the base into your dish of choice. One thing to keep in mind in this process is that you do want to keep things sterile and clean and to manage water well, since they are seedlings and so they are prone to damage if overwatered or underwatered. So I'd recommend that in that 1 to 2 day period or 3 day period, as you sit in the dark, to kind of mist them twice a day with a spray bottle. Then after that point, when you've kind of gotten to this stage, you can start to just put water in the base of your container and try to keep that kind of moist throughout the day. And I kind of check mine a couple times a day because they're just so darn cute. I can't help myself. So that's how you grow microgreens at home. And I'll be happy to take your questions at the end. So next, Katharina will show you how to grow lettuce.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little quiet, Katharina.
Okay, is that a little bit better?
Yeah, that's a little bit better. I think you might just need to use your outdoor voice. Thank you.
I can do that. So today I'm going to show you all how to grow lettuce at home. You'll need a couple of things. One is a cutting board. You'll need a knife, something to put your lettuce in. So it could be a cup, it could be a bowl, just something to hold the lettuce up and hold water in it. And then a head of lettuce from the grocery store. So you'll need a full head of lettuce, not the cut pre-mixed salad mix for this. So it's pretty simple. Once you got your lettuce, and I've tried this with romaine and red leaf lettuce. This is green leaf lettuce. You can really try whatever lettuce you'd like. You're going to want to cut it at the base, leaving about 2 or 3 inches at least. So cut all the way through. And the hope is that you won't damage the growing point down here at the base. You want to preserve that because that's where the new leaf growth will come out of. Once you have that cut apart, you can wash and clean this, spin it, and use it in a salad mix, or you can use it for a wrap. And then what you'll do is take your glass, set the base of lettuce in the glass, and then you're going to pour enough water to cover the very bottom of the base. And you want to have about half an inch to an inch of water covering the base. And then once you have it at that point, you'll put it in a sunny window, or if you happen to have some grow lights at home, you can put it underneath that. And then this is what it looks like after 1 day, so not a whole lot yet. And this is something that's been going for about a week or so. So you can see the new growth in the center. And you'll want to change out the water daily. It can get kind of icky after time. And once you see some roots growing from the base of the plant, you could actually put it in soil if you'd like. So that's how you grow lettuce at home. And then Connor will show us how to grow onions at home.
All right, yeah, so I'll be talking about how to propagate onions. So let's look down at the workstation. And so this will be very similar to what Kat talked about with the lettuce. So you need a cutting board, a knife, you'll need some water, and you'll need some sort of pot with a little bit of potting soil in it. And you can use this with any type of onion. Green onions, this will also work. And so the first one, we'll look at this onion bulb, and we'll note that there are 2 poles to the bulb. There's sort of the leaf end, and then there's the root end, which is what we're interested in. And so what you do is you'll cut off the root end of the onion. So this bit that you normally toss out, and you want to keep like maybe a ½ inch or so of that bulb on with the root. You'll take that, you'll take your pot, and you'll add a little bit of water. You don't want too much water. You want it to be damp, but not sopping wet. If you have too much standing water in your pot, your onions will just rot. And I can tell you in preparing for this that rotten onions smell about as poorly as you would expect them to. So you'll take your cut onion root and you sort of slip it down into the dirt, about a ½ inch or so down, cover with soil, and you want the root end to be down. You'll take that and you'll put it in a sunny area, so in a windowsill, or better yet, if you have someplace outside that has full sun, you can put it in, you put it there, and then you just let it grow. And so eventually you'll start seeing little sprouts come up. And so these are actually 2 green onions. These have been going for about a week and a half, and you can see they're growing up nicely. Here's a normal yellow onion that has been going for about 2 weeks. You can see it's starting to put out more leaves. And then this guy is about 3 to 4 weeks old, and you can see it's putting up even more leaves. And so for the like a yellow onion, you'll be ready to harvest in 90-ish days. And one thing you do to tell how big your onion is you can actually count the number of leaves that are coming up, because each of these leaves will correspond to a layer in that onion. So you can see that this guy now has about 5 layers going. And yeah, so that's how you propagate onions. So we'll, I guess, open it up for questions now.
So one last thing, we now want to challenge you all to try to grow some of these plants in your own spaces. And we want you to share your pictures with us on Twitter, on Facebook, for a chance to win a WIMP/Patentology gift basket. And all of our info is there on the screen. And visit our website and see some of our resources for outreach. If you want to get involved, we'd love to. you, and come join. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Again, if you have any questions, throw them in the Q&A at the bottom, and they'll answer them as they come up. We'll give it about 5 minutes or so worth of questions.
We've got a whole bunch of questions. I'll ask you guys. So Elizabeth's wondering when the chia seedlings should be moved into light.
Yeah, so the chia seedlings, I move them into sunlight once you see the cotyledons emerge. And that would be around day 3 or day 4.
Cool. We've got a question. Someone's wondering what other types of produce might be good to propagate.
Yeah, so at least for growing micropages that isn't necessarily propagation, you could kind of do this with anything. I've seen people do radish, broccoli, flax seeds, and what's fun about all these micropages, they have kind of different flavor profiles. So you can kind of grow what you like most and experiment and see what tastes best with whatever you're cooking.
Cool. So it sounds like you're only limited by your imagination and what you've got in the fridge. Let's see, a question for Connor about some onions. Can we grow them in just water, or do you have to use soil?
Yeah, so so you apparently can grow them in water, similar to what Kat showed with the lettuce. And there's a lot of methods online that you can look up and that show you how to do that. I will say that I have tried doing that, and I found that it's difficult to keep the onions, just keep the flesh of the bulb above the surface of the water so it's not submerged, because if it does get wet, it'll start to rot, and then it won't grow and it'll just smell bad and it won't work. So I found that it's easier if you do have like a pot with soil just to stick it in the soil anyway, because even if you're growing it in water, you'll eventually need to transplant it into soil to get it to go all the way to a bulb.
It's actually what happened with my onions. My water level was too high and they started to rot. So thank you for letting me know why that happened. That answers Amanda's question about how often we should change water for onions, but what about how often the water should be changed for lettuce, Katharina?
So for the lettuce, you'll want to change it daily. And my first one, I forgot to do that. And I think I actually should have put it into soil. Probably a couple of days ago, because the base of it has started to rot and get kind of mushy. So hopefully I have better luck with this one.
Cool. Somebody else is wondering how long the lettuce and microgreens will keep growing, and if it's cool to just keep cutting them back and regrowing, or if you should replant.
The lettuce would continue to grow as long as you maintain that growing point down at the base. If the microgreens have more than the cotyledon leaves that Mari had mentioned, and you maintain the growing point for that plant as well, it will keep growing. But if you cut that growing point off, the plant will not continue to grow.
Good to know. And then one more question. Do you prefer to use tap or distilled water? I guess I have personal experience with Madsen tap water doing kind of funky things with my gardening, but I'm interested in what you guys think.
So far, I've just been using tap water.
I've been using filtered water. I have on hand, and yeah, I do think Madsen tap water is kind of harsh, especially for young plants.
Awesome. Thanks so much for answering these questions, y'all. One more comment that someone made. Elizabeth said she's had luck propagating fennel. So if you're looking to branch out, that's another option. I think I got to everybody's questions, but if you have more, feel free to plug them in now.
If not, I've got a question you guys might be able to answer quick. I don't know if any of y'all have any experience growing any spices in the kitchen, but if you do, what are your tips on that?
I really haven't grown a whole lot for spices. Right now I have some lavender and rosemary outside, but the plants are pretty small. But nothing like pepper I haven't grown.
Well, rosemary is the only spice you need, so that's fine. All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, thanks guys for coming on. And we'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't know about y'all, but I'm definitely gonna try some of that at home. My plants in the windowsill over here, they're not looking the greatest, but again, I'm gonna try my hardest. So that concludes our at-home science portion of the night. If you're leaving us now, make sure to check out this event survey that we asked about you earlier in the night. We'll post another link in the chat about the event survey. That'll help us out a lot. You might see a follow-up email containing that as well. So we're gonna shift into our first science trivia session for the night, hosted by Premier Trivia. Again, if you haven't registered your team already, please do so now. Check the chat for links to that and instructions on how to be a good trivia participant. We'll give you guys about 10 minutes, so we'll give you guys 9 minutes to use the bathroom, go for another beer or another drink, and collect yourselves after that exciting at-home science session before our DJ for the night, Amy, leads us in trivia. So make sure you're back here by 7:10 when Amy starts the trivia session.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who are still paying attention to what's going on Facebook, hi, please feel free to jump in. There's still plenty of room for more trivia teams, so feel free to register through the links that are in the Facebook event, and we are going to get started in about 5 to 10 minutes. Thanks for hanging out tonight. In the meantime, I hope you guys are ready to go because we're going to get started soon. But the cool thing is that our prizes, I know that you've probably seen some photos of them here and there, but they are some awesome 100% cotton face masks. So I happen to love them. I saw them and I'm like, oh, well, now I want one. So fantastic. Yes, there you go. Thank you, Chris, for showing that off. Madeline, if you happen to have pictures to share, that would be great too. You can do that at this time. But yeah, they're so, so cool. So that is what you're playing for tonight. Everybody on the top 3 teams are going to want to walk away with one of those. So yeah, see, you've got pretty heart, pretty lungs. Like, I love it. So we are going to be playing for those, giving those away. But if you're not in the top 3 teams, that's okay, because we have another session happening at 9 p.m. It's going to be at 9 o'clock. So at this time, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. Those of you who have played trivia before online, you kind of know how this works. But for those of you who have no idea, we're just going to run it down quickly. It is literally question, answer, question, answer. I am going to, okay, awesome. Thank you, Molly. I see you. Thank you for clarifying, Evan. It is non-surgical. Those face masks are non-surgical. Making sure everyone can hear me okay. Is everybody doing all right on sound? Certainly hope so. I am going to give you the first question in a round, which we have 5 questions in each round tonight, at least we hope so. Then I will play a little bit of ambient music for you guys to have a chance to turn your answers into the panelists. You'll get 1 point for each correct answer you give us, but not for the final question. Final question works a little differently. We'll go into detail on how that works when we get there. I know you guys have already gone through the rules, but there are a couple of quick ones. Number 1, you only get 1 shot at the answer. So once you've answered, That's it. You can't change it on me. You are going to have about 1.5 to 2 minutes to answer each one of these questions. We are also going to, hi Susan, thanks. We're also going to make sure that no one is, well, we don't have to worry about it. We're not shouting out answers. We're not, getting crazy or anything. We're just going to have a chill, fun, like rapid fire trivia. And these questions are amazing. For the 7 p.m. show, the theme is Earth, Water, Air, Fire. Earth, Water, Air, Fire. So we will go ahead and get started on that. But of course, I have to do this first. There you go. That's my version. Earth, water, air, fire. There you go. What else do you need? By the way, some people are like, oh, what are you, everybody's drinking something. Well, of course we are. I've got my vodka and Sierra Mist right over there, but I can't reach it. So I have to give you a question first so then I can drink, right? Okay, so let's get started, you guys. We have question number 1. What phenomena are measured by the Richter scale? Again, what phenomena are measured by the Richter scale? All right, I think that's everybody. For those of you who are still tuning in on Facebook, jump in to the Zoom. We still have plenty of room for folks to play. So question number 1, what phenomena are measured by the Richter scale? Of course, correct answer here is earthquakes. Nice job, you guys. Let's get into something maybe a little tougher. Maybe a little tougher. What American agricultural scientist from the Tuskegee Institute is known for working with soil management and crop rotation to restore nitrogen in the soil? I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for you so that way you don't have to worry about me needing to repeat a question for you. There you go. What American agricultural scientist from the Tuskegee Institute is known for working with soil management and crop rotation to restore nitrogen in the soil? Got about 1.5 minutes here. Alrighty, question number 2. What American agricultural scientist from the Tuskegee Institute is known for working with soil management and crop rotation to restore nitrogen in the soil? He rotated cotton fields with peanuts and soybeans, and that is George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver. Nice job. A lot of you nailed it. So let's get into our next one. Question number 3, one of the saltiest bodies of water. What is the lowest point below sea level on the surface of the earth? Again, one of the saltiest bodies of water. What is the lowest point below sea level on the surface of the earth? Alrighty, that question, one of the saltiest bodies of water. What is the lowest point below sea level on the surface of the earth? Looking for the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea. Really crazy. About 1,400 feet below sea level in the depression. So let's go into the next question. The Earth's inner core is composed primarily of what element? One more time, the Earth's inner core is composed primarily of what element? All right, what do we have here? Oh, please keep in mind, there's only one answer per team. Once you turn it in, I can't give it back to you. So make sure that you are sure about your answer before you get that turned in. Fortunately, sometimes people want to try to turn it into the wrong answer, but we don't let them. The Earth's inner core is composed primarily of what elements? It is, oh, what is that? It is, in fact, iron. Iron, nice job. So we're getting into the next one. Formed roughly 330 million years ago. The name of the most recent supercontinent is Pangaea, but what is the name of the super ocean that surrounded the supercontinent? Again, formed roughly 330 million years ago, what is the name of the super ocean that surrounded Pangaea? All right. Amazing. So the humor portion of the evening has started early, which I am completely good with. Some of you just want to be clever, and I am completely down with clever. I love some of these incorrect answers. You know they're wrong. We know they're wrong, but love them anyway. What is the name of the super ocean that surrounded the supercontinents? It is not Oceania. We're not looking at Pano-Oceano. We're not talking about the big Pacific or the big ocean. The big wet and the big O are also not correct answers. It is the Panthalassic Ocean, or Panthalassa. That is what we're looking for. But hey, we just learned something new. And you guys made me giggle, so thanks for that. We are going to get into round two now. Round two, more questions for you. Within plus or minus 5%, what percentage of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans according to NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration? You know and you love. Again, plus or minus 5%, what percentage of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans according to NOAA? Within plus or minus 5%, what percentage of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans according to NOAA? Your correct answer, if you wanted to hit it right on the nose, would be 70%. But if you said 65 to 75, the points are yours. Nice job. Let's get into the next question here. Drainage basins are an area of land where all precipitation collects into a single body of water. What is the largest river drainage basin in the world? One more time, drainage basins are an area of land where all precipitation collects into a single body of water. What is the largest river drainage basin in the world? Alrighty, drainage basins are an area of land where all precipitation collects into a single body of water. What is the largest river drainage basin in the world? Well, let's go down the top five. Fifth largest river drainage basin in the world is the Mississippi. Fourth is Rio de la Plata. The third is the Nile. The second is the Congo. And our winner is the Amazon River Basin. Amazon is the largest river drainage basin in the world. Coming up next, tides and tidal waves are caused by what force? Again, tides and tidal waves, they are caused by what force? All right, quick shout out, real quick. Hugh Schmidt, would you do me a quick favor and email, or don't email, good Lord, don't email me. Send us panelists a really quick message with your team name. That would be amazing. And if you didn't register, that's totally okay. I just want to make sure that I'm registering your answers. So send us a quick message and we'll be good to go there. In the meantime, tides and tidal waves. Okay, tides and tidal waves are caused by what force? They are caused by gravity, the gravitational pull of both the moon and the sun. So obviously we're going to score a little bit lax on that one. If you knew what we were talking about and I know what you're talking about, then great, the point is yours. Oh, that's odd. hopefully, I just heard from someone that they can't hear me. I'm hoping that, oh, okay, good. Now you can. Yay. We're going to keep going if that's all right with you guys. Rapid fire is, we are definitely running behind schedules. So the only ocean current that makes an uninterrupted circle around the entire Earth without hitting land is named after what land mass? I'll do that one more time. The only ocean current that makes an uninterrupted circle around the entire Earth without hitting land is named after what land mass? The only ocean current that makes an uninterrupted circle around the entire Earth without hitting land is named after what land mass? It is Antarctica, Antarctic circumpolar current, or the west wind drift. So Antarctica is the answer we're looking for here. I'm gonna give you guys one more question and then we're gonna get into the final. Who is the first woman to reach the opposite pole of that landmass? So Antarctica. Who is the first woman to reach the opposite pole of Antarctica? All right. I have to admit, I'm like, this disappointed because I love this question and I just, well, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. Who's the first woman to reach the opposite pole of the aforementioned landmass? That's Antarctica. Correct answer is Anne Bancroft. Anne Bancroft, she was the first woman to reach the North Pole. She skied the South Pole. She's the first woman to travel to both poles. So Anne Bancroft. So, yes, potato time. Go ahead, just get a new captain and have them rename themselves quickly because we are getting into the final question of this round. Want to make sure you guys have a little bit of a chance to have a break before the next thing coming up, which is the science policy panel. So definitely stick around for that. It's going to be great, but you're going to want to refresh your drink because I haven't given you a chance to grab a beverage. Sorry. So here's how this is going to work. The final question is going to be a question that's going to be answered by a number. And it's going to be as simple as the closest team on the number line to the correct answer is going to walk away with 3 points. Second closest team on the number line will walk away with 2 points. And the third closest team will walk away with 1 point for the final question. If some teams are equidistant on the number line to the correct answer, then I'm giving multiple teams those points. So multiple teams can get 3 points or 2 points or 1 point. But keep in mind, no talking amongst teams. You are on your own. So hopefully you guys are ready for this question. Using the Kármán line, 100 kilometers, as the definition of space, not the US Air Force's definition of 80 kilometers, how many people have been in space as of July 2020, according to FAI criteria, also known as the World Air Sports Federation? Again, using the Kármán line, which is 100 kilometers as the definition of space, not the US Air Force's definition of 80 kilometers, how many people have been in space as of July 2020, according to FAI criteria? Giving you guys 3 minutes for this one, 3 minutes to talk it out. All right, it looks like everyone is in. So I just want to say a couple quick things before I give you the final question's answer. Number one, thank you for sticking through this fun intermission of trivia before you guys get back into your curriculum for the night, so to speak. Also, huge thanks to all of the organizers of this event and also our primary sponsor, Research America. So glad to be here and so glad that you guys are having fun, hanging out, drinking at home, but doing something with your brains at the same time. So one more thing, those awesome masks that are going to be our prizes, I can't tell you who won them yet. And that is simply because the game went by really quickly and I have some scoring catch up to do. So I will announce that before we get started with our 9 o'clock session for trivia, for those of you who are sticking around. For those of you who are not, we will make sure that that gets announced. Your email addresses were on the sign up, but if you did not give us your email address for some reason, please make sure that you private message that to us panelists so that way we can email you with details on how to ship your lovely masks to you in the event that you won stuff. So all of that said and out of the way, oh yeah, one more thing. I am with Premier Trivia. I forgot that I'm supposed to, tell you where I'm from too. Premier Trivia is, we're doing online shows right now because of COVID. We're also doing a couple of out and about shows in bars of venues around the Madison area. Our website, wipremiertrivia.com, will tell you everything you need to know about that if you want to come out and hang out with us some other time. So our final question. Using the Kármán line of 100 kilometers as the definition of space, not the US Air Force's definition of 80 kilometers. How many people have been in space as of July 2020 according to FAI criteria? Your correct answer is 566. 566. So that said, you guys were all over the place. Somebody said 8, somebody said like 700. So we'll see how that shakes out. I will give you guys your information and who won the prizes at the beginning of the 9 o'clock show. But hey, thank you so much. Take a quick break and be back here in about 5 to 10 minutes, if that's okay, for the science policy panel. Thanks, guys.
Yep, like Amy said, we're going to take a little bit of break, get you guys a chance to go to the bathroom and get some more beer or whatever you're drinking. But yeah, another plug to register for our second session of trivia in about an hour with Amy. We'll see her again. If you haven't registered already, do so. We will probably throw something in the chat here in a second. But yeah, stick around for our science policy panel in a couple of minutes here, right around 8 o'clock. Moderated by Laura Borth, graduate student and fellow CaSP here at UW-Madison. So hope to see you there.
All right, I think that we'll get started and hopefully Bianca will be able to join us at some point. Hello, everyone. Looks like we have over 50 people watching, so hello and welcome. I'm Laura Borth. I'll be moderating the discussion tonight. And throughout the discussion, please leave any questions for the panelists in the Zoom question and answer or on the Facebook event, and we'll try to address as many questions as we can. Also, I encourage Joe and Kate to ask each other any follow-up questions and make this a great discussion. So the panel that joins us today will discuss how to use science to craft evidence-based policy, especially on controversial issues. This is important because science can guide smart decision making, especially when it comes to public health emergencies like COVID. We hope over the next hour, you'll recognize the challenge in the work, appreciate how science can help solve critical issues in our community, and leave excited to get involved in local policy. The panelists joining us today have backgrounds in national, state, county, and local government. So we have Dr. Joe Handelsman, Professor of Plant Pathology and Director of the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Kate Austin Stanford, the Director of Operations at Public Health, Madison and Dane County. And before diving into questions, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves a bit more to our listeners. Joe, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's really great to see so many people, or know of so many people, since we can't really see you, engaged in a discussion of science policy on a rainy Thursday night. So we really appreciate this. My background is in microbiology. I'm a researcher, and my lab studies interactions of bacteria with plant roots and in soil, and the role that antibiotics play in the lives of bacteria in the real world outside, as in soil. I run the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery, as Laura said, but before I came back to Wisconsin, I was a science advisor for President Obama in the White House. And so I was the head of the science division of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And I worked with the president and the large staff in OSTP on the whole range of science issues. My division specialized in science education, space science, agriculture, medicine, public health, and a whole variety of other things. So that's all I'll tell you now, and we can talk more later about the policy process I was engaged in.
Great, thanks. And I'm Kate Austin Stanford. Really happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for the invite. Thanks everyone for being here for this conversation. It's a really important one, and it's a timely one. And so I'm hopeful that it will be valuable to you. I'm happy to be here. So currently I am the Director of Operations for Public Health Madison Dane County. We are your local city county public health department. And so we sit between kind of two entities of local government. We are the only department locally that is structured this way, in this merged fashion. So the policy that we're talking about and that we're working with both happens with county government and the county board, and with the city government and the city council here in Madison. So my role day to day in this position is to lead the operations division. It is both kind of the operational engine of the agency. So it's really that kind of nuts and bolts and the budget and the administration components, but also our strategic engine. And so really thinking about our long-term planning, how do we set up a performance management system to make sure that we are constantly improving how we deliver our services, how we inform our implementation of local policy. And so that's kind of what I do day to day in kind of the normal world. We are in COVID-19 world right now. So we're a department of about 150 permanent staff. And I would say at this time, about 90% of our staff are supporting our COVID response efforts. So when this response started for us back in January, if we remember back then, it kind of feels like a different world at this point. I stepped in as the incident commander of our response. We're the lead agency in this response locally. And back then, when we had only the 12th case in the nation, and obviously things have changed a lot since then. I do want to make a quick disclaimer. This spring, I became a new mom, so I took some time away for maternity leave. So if you think you hear a baby, you probably do. But I'm back now at work, working in a planning and finance role as we map our response and recovery efforts. And I was really drawn to the field of public health more broadly, because I just was really taken by the discipline and looking at the health of populations and really looking at those upstream factors that can influence health outcomes. So thinking about housing, transportation, built environment, and all the education, employment, all of those determinants of health that we know are so important, and we know that those policy systems and environmental changes really can make a huge difference for the health of our communities.
Cool, thank you. Okay, for the first question, to get everyone who's listening in familiar with what science-based policy looks like locally, what are some recent science-based policies in Madison or Wisconsin that either impact your work or impact the people that you serve? And we'll start with Kate for this question.
Great. So we'll talk about more of the COVID response work later on. But outside of that response work, our department, nearly all of the work, the work is rooted in science, right? And it's a lot of the work we do is implementing policy and implementing that evidence-based policy. So some examples of what we're working on before, we kind of turned our attentions to the coronavirus response. We received, at the beginning of this year, some additional funding for lead mitigation in homes in Madison and Dane County, just as a real concrete example of what that looks like locally. Working on, there was just the policy that raised the age to buy tobacco products from 18 to 21. So that's kind of the field that we're working in. And additionally, one of the big topics that was at the top of our minds and our work was PFAS. And so this is talking about those per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Those were kind of compounds that were produced from 1940 to 2000-ish, with peak production in 1970s through 2000. And they're found in many firefighting foams, oils, and stain and grease blockers. And so we know that those compounds are showing up in our local water systems. And so we were working really closely with the state and with community partners and community advocates to use the building knowledge base to change some policy. And so one concrete example of that has been updated guidance around fish consumption in our local lakes. That came through in coordination with the state. So we're doing a lot of the communication and making sure that that information is getting out to the folks who, we do have communities in Madison and Dane County that do rely on fishing as a food source. So making sure that the new guidance, the updated guidance is translated, that it's in areas that folks can see, and that it's as in plain language as possible when we're talking about some of these complex topics.
Cool. And Joe?
Well, I can't really get off the topic of COVID-19, so my answer certainly won't be as interesting as Kate's. I think the local, county, and city guidance and requirements on gathering in groups of certain numbers and wearing masks in public have had a tremendous effect on the world that I live in, because my goal right now, besides keeping my family safe, is keeping my students safe in my lab. And they returned to the lab in early June, and everything that goes on around us, of course, affects the probability that any one of them will come down with coronavirus. So it's really important to us that the regulations have been developed, and the one that I was really pleased to hear about today was the requirement to wear masks on buses, because one of my students has noticed that she's often the only person on the bus wearing a mask, and she's been really pretty nervous about that. So that's really good news for us.
Great. All right, I want to ask you both about the process for integrating science into policymaking. So in your opinion, how do people do it well, and what challenges exist? And if you can speak to a role that you've played in this. And Joe, if you want to start.
Well, when I was in the White House, you can imagine we covered quite a range of policies, and no one person could be an expert in all of those areas. And in fact, none of us were experts really in any of the areas, because the areas were so broad. And so even when for example, a plant pathology problem came across my desk, I still didn't feel that I had all the facts and the current facts. So I needed to talk to people out in the field. And I think the most important thing that President Obama really guided us toward, and it was definitely a policy of our office, was you go and you find the experts in the field, wherever they are, whoever they are, and you pump them for as much information as you can so that you can make good policy that's based on really good advice that is solid science. So I found myself on the phone with scientists all over the country, in fact, all over the world. Depending upon the issue, I would find experts, or my staff would find experts, and it was really quite remarkable how the scientific community was willing to give us little short courses for, like a 2-hour tutorial on a given virus. While I was in the White House, we had the Ebola epidemic, we had the Zika virus epidemic, we had a corn stripe virus. It was quite a time for viral disease. And so I spent a lot of time talking to virologists and epidemiologists and people who were experts in all the areas that I needed to cover. So to me, that was the essence of good policy, was using the experts. And unfortunately, in many settings, we see people assuming that they know answers without actually consulting experts. And so dependence on experts to me is the core.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think for policymakers to be able to be humble enough to listen to those experts, and to also know that our knowledge base and our, and science across fields is ever changing, right? And so to be willing to change course if needed, if the science requires it, I think that is really important to be able to do this well, to not be tied to an approach or a policy simply because that's how it's always been done, but to be able to adapt and change. Prior to my current role at public health, I worked, it was in DC and working at the federal level with a consulting firm, but working with the Veterans Health Administration, Military Health Service. And so to have, those are truly enormous organizations with very, very wide reach. And the contrast that I kind of find between that level and working here at the local level now is just the speed, kind of the possibility for change. It takes a longer time when that scope and the agency you're working within is just that much larger, right? And at the local level, we're the closest folks to constituents. We need to react quickly to be able to address concerns in our communities. And so we need to both recognize that, kind of address that need to react, but also know that the science doesn't always quite move as fast as public opinion does. So it's a balancing act, particularly here at the local level. And also in our work in public health, some of the policy fixes that the public asks for and demands of us as a department, as a local agency, is sometimes outside of our locus of control. So really to be communicating with our partners and really understanding where we have the power and opportunity to make change, and then where we can't, where it's kind of outside of our locus of control, to advocate and push for the experts that need to be in the room to move the conversation forward at different levels.
Cool. So a follow-up question to that, and you both spoke to it a little bit, talking about finding the expert, having policymakers be humble enough, but what do you think is a successful way to interact with policymakers who don't have their own science advisors? And this could be interacting either as yourself or as an expert or as a constituent. Joe, if you want to go first.
Well, one of the things that surprised me perhaps the most in my time in Washington was how accessible public policymakers are. And most of them consider themselves public servants, and they make themselves quite available to the public, and they want to hear from the public. So, for example, in my office, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, we'd sort of had a general policy that anybody who wanted to could come in and talk to us at least once. And we might not invite them back, but we would at least hear from them once. And we heard the most amazing diversity of science from those people who came in and took advantage of that. But my sense was that not everyone knows that. I certainly didn't know that you could just, set up an appointment at the White House and tell the science advisors what you think. And if there aren't science advisors, there are other people, of course, who are interested in hearing the public's views. And so I think just getting that word out that in most administrations, the White House is pretty accessible, and the Hill, Congress is also very accessible. And often people think that by talking to aides, of congressmen, congresspeople, and senators, they're being shunted to someone who doesn't really have power. Turns out, as I discovered, the aides are the ones that really have the power to bring issues to the primaries, the senators and congresspeople. And so those are the people to access. And so going in and talking to an aide and who may give you a lot more time than the principal would, and you can really brief them deeply on the issue. And they may very well not have any scientific knowledge. That's a situation where you're very unlikely to find scientists. That can be incredibly powerful.
And I think a lot of that exists at the local level too, just those opportunities for input and opportunities for engagement, and really, both kind of taking, if you're interested and want to move local decision makers on these issues, to do that research and to reach out and ask questions about which committee do I need to be at to provide public comment? Who are the folks that staff the different agencies within your local government, with your state government, and how to connect to them? And so I think, Joe, you're absolutely right in that, most folks are in the field of public service to do just that, right? And to listen and to make themselves available. And it really makes a difference. If we get, there's a lot of groups that kind of organize individuals locally, as well as on the state and national level, to provide kind of a coordinated approach to push and advocate for a specific issue. So that's an avenue to pursue if you're just an individual. I do want to highlight two resources that are available to decision makers, and that you can, as an individual, can explore and figure out how to get connected to. These are both here in Wisconsin. So first is a program called What Works for Health, and that is out of the County Health Rankings and Roadmaps program at the university and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And so this initiative it looks at policies and programs and interventions that address gaps across the health factors, right? To address all those social determinants of health. And what Works for Health does is really combs the research, looks at the most current randomized controlled trials, pre-post studies, like all of the different levels of rigor of the scientific evidence base for these policies, and ranks them in terms of their effectiveness to make change. And so as someone in local government, this is a really useful tool to be able to quickly go somewhere where you don't have the time to do that deep dive into the research, to have that already synthesized. And a recommendation put forward is really helpful. So if there's policies that you are advocating for, and a resource like that exists that has already kind of synthesized that information and put it in a nice package for your elected officials, definitely take advantage of that. And if you'll indulge me, I want to share one more resource. It's the Evidence-Based Health Policy Project, which is a partnership, again, between the UW Population Health Institute and the La Follette School of Public Affairs at UW. And so this project goal is, again, to provide policymakers, and this is primarily at the state capitol, with timely, high quality information and the latest science to allow for evidence-based decision making. And so this group works really hard to navigate politically polarized waters and to show up with that evidence base so that folks from both parties come to the table and really listen to the current, you know, the latest and the greatest and those experts. And it's really, they have open forums. Prior to COVID, they were held, I think it was quarterly, just about, on lots of different topics. So if you find kind of your area of expertise or your area of passion and interest, you're able to go and attend those events and also refer your elected officials to this resource, which is a really great one, well vetted, well researched for evidence-based policymaking.
Great, thanks for those resources. And you'll notice that at least one of those resources has been posted in the chat so that you can check it out during the webinar. Okay, so you each have policy experience at different levels of government, and obviously different structures exist at each level. We've spoken to it a little bit with the similarities that you can walk into the office at all those levels, and then how easy it is to be on a committee at the local level. But what factors do you think need to be considered when you're developing a local science-based policy versus a national science-based policy? So either of you chime in, whoever has an answer first.
That's a great question. I will say, I'll just jump in really quick just to reiterate a point that I made earlier. It's really to think about, for us, thinking about what we have the purview over, what's in our control as a local entity. Some of the areas where we'd like to make stronger science-based policy were preempted by the state from doing so. And so really to kind of do your research, work with your local counterparts and local organizations. A lot of the local organizations are really skilled at being able to target the appropriate level of government because a lot of that kind of true foundational change and mandates can happen at that higher level and then it trickles down for implementation to the locals. And so really being thoughtful and strategic about where you are asking, what you're asking for and whether it's in with that entity's area and scope of work and control.
I think all levels of political intervention or policy intervention benefit from having experts in policy. And so if you're a scientist trying to inject science into the policy making, it really helps to have a liaison who knows exactly what Kate was saying in terms of the level at which you might enter and also how to enter and who to talk to. For the university, for example, when we want to affect policy in Washington, we have experts in Washington who represent the university and can make that case or bring a representative of the university who's an expert in the topic to the right offices. And most universities have that kind of linkage. And that really helps because those people are around the policymakers all the time. So they know them, they know who is interested in what issues, and they know the route to get you in, and the scientist doesn't have to worry about that part of it.
Great. Okay, to move on in the science policy topics, current topics, effective policy is inclusive of diverse voices. So how do we engage the whole community to discuss hard topics that are maybe partisan and questions that really matter? And then what is needed to take those results and direct it into an inclusive and representative policy? It's kind of a long question, but how do we engage all the voices? And then how do we enact policy that helps all the voices. Kate, maybe you want to speak to that first, since you've been talking about upstream factors you focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple kind of initial thoughts. I think first of all, as we're thinking about inclusive policy making and really being intentional about including voices in the process, as government officials, we need to acknowledge that the current state of our society, the inequities that we see in health outcomes, in educational outcomes, really across the board, didn't happen by accident, right? Like, those were policy decisions that were made despite, milestone civil rights laws to maintain those racial inequities. And so I think being honest with community and acknowledging that, owning that really allows for a basis of trust to be developed with community members and populations that have historically had really negative and harmful interactions with government. And so that is really key to moving us in a different direction. And so as local government, I think that we are uniquely situated to really examine and transform policies and practices, how those policies are implemented on a day-to-day basis towards racial equity. And a component of that when we're talking about science is to be willing to broaden our view, broaden our scope to really treasure and value lived experience in addition to what we know to be true about science. A lot of the studies that we've done or that have been done related to the implementation of different policies, or just the science base has not, and the research base has not always been inclusive of a diverse set of experiences and voices, right? And so if only white folks' experiences were studied within a trial, and we're basing our decisions and policymaking on that study, we're still going to continue the inequities that we see. And so if we are more inclusive and broaden our understanding around how we shape policy as it relates to science, to bring in that evidence, but to also include lived experience and voice from the community, that's going to get us to, that's a good start to get us to a different place. And lastly, I'll say that both the city and the county have invested significant time and resources into equity work, and us as a health department in health equity work. And there are a set of toolkits, particularly on the City of Madison side, that allow us to do an equity analysis on policies as they come forward. So it is bringing folks to the table up front as you're building and crafting policy to talk about who would be disproportionately impacted by the implementation of this policy, and how can we mitigate some of those things up front. So we're not learning years down the line that this policy that we implemented, we thought it was this great idea, you know, it's going to really transform one area of our community, to learn down the line that it just perpetuated the inequities. Let's have those conversations up front. Let's have the right people at the table from the get-go to shape what that policy really looks like in order to avoid unnecessary harm.
At the federal level, there was a fairly well-established process in the Obama administration, and I don't know if this carries into other administrations before or after. But when we wanted to get public input, which was always on essentially every policy, we would sometimes have meetings that involved inviting people. So we would have 20 to 70 scientists and citizens come in and talk about an issue. And we would bring in lots of different perspectives on the science and, as Kate called it, the lived experience. And then we would begin to draft a policy after consultation with the community. And then once we had a draft policy, it would be placed in the Federal Register, which is one of the ways the federal government uses to get feedback. And the policy is posted in the Federal Register. It's openly accessible. There's a period for comment. And during that period, it's usually 60 days or more. Anybody can write in comments about the policy and suggest changes. And I have to say, we got some of our best ideas from the Federal Register process. I thought, oh, we're just going to get, wild comments from people who don't know anything. And it turned out we got lots of comments from a diversity of people, including some incredible experts who had ideas that we hadn't thought of that shaped policy. So I found that to be one of the most exciting parts of policymaking, was really drawing in that broad audience. But I think to be truly inclusive, you have to work at it. And health areas are, I think, a really good example. And the policy that I worked on was President Obama's Precision Medicine Initiative, which, if you've heard of the All of Us initiative at Wisconsin, which involves getting a cohort of people and taking lots of information on their genomes and their metabolomes and all sorts of other measurements, and then trying to use this massive database to find relationships in health that we haven't seen before. That was actually a total of 1 million people. And so Madsen is one of the nodes of that process and has a cohort to contribute to the 1 million. But when we first introduced the Precision Medicine Initiative, one of the things that we knew we needed to work on was getting minority populations engaged in developing the policy and ultimately in engaging in these studies like the 1 million person cohort, or we were going to be repeating history in terms of just leaving entire segments of society out. And of course, because of historical abuses by the health professions toward particular groups, particularly Blacks and Indians on reservations who were treated just horribly in experimentation, there's a lot of residual hostility there. And so we again used the concept of a liaison, and we found people in the communities who believed in scientific research and recognized that the past may be pretty egregious, and there are some pretty horrible examples of the way minority populations were misused. But if we continue to shun the scientific community from these communities, then the data from these communities won't be incorporated into future research, and that will be left out of policy. So, for example, we reached into the African American community through the faith-based community. And I remember one particular pastor's wife that we worked with in Harlem, who had worked for years on convincing her parishioners that working with Columbia University, which is right in their midst, on medical research was absolutely critical. She would just say outright to them, you can stay on your high horse and bring up Tuskegee and all the other examples of the terrible things that have been done to African Americans by the medical establishment, and then you're going to be left out of the future. Or you can get off your horse and get involved, and you can have your genes and your health issues included. So she was pretty blunt about it. I don't think I could have gotten away saying that, but she did. So I found that working from within the communities was the most important element, and the same with Native American communities and Hispanic communities, whether it's a language issue or just a trust issue. Having somebody from within the community translate essentially is so critical.
Great. So to come to the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet, COVID-19. I have a couple of questions about COVID-19. I think we could go on all night. But to start, what are some ways government officials and scientists or experts are collaborating to address the pandemic?
Yeah, so this is, as we know, it's a fluid situation. It's a situation with evolving science. And so one of the primary ways that this, collaboration between government officials and scientists is happening is that as the evidence base grows, as we learn more about this virus, the guidance changes necessarily in response to that. So you'll see at the local level here in Madison, and Joe, you spoke to this earlier about the masking policy the emergency order requiring masks indoors. That was a response to what we've learned over the course of this response. And there is really significant collaboration happening across tiers of government. One example from kind of way back when we were getting started in the response in that kind of first case in Madison, if you remember back then, the CDC actually deployed a GO team to Madison, Wisconsin, to work here with the local health department, also in collaboration with the state. That GO team was comprised of epidemiologists and researchers who both were teaching our local team, how to conduct that COVID-19 testing, and they were sharing the latest information, what they were learning through the CDC, through their international networks with the state, and also to set up ways to capture information so we could learn from, because this was one of the earliest cases, how we could learn from this individual who had tested positive with coronavirus, what we could learn about the virus moving forward. And so it was kind of twofold in collaborating in the response and also understanding that we need to be actively researching in this area as we move forward because it is this new and novel virus.
I think we've all seen numerous ways that, for example, Tony Fauci from the National Institutes of Health, or the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, and several others have had a voice at the federal level. The head of CDC is another one. Occasionally we hear from FDA. And I think those have been extremely important in bringing the science of coronavirus into policymaking. They haven't always been successful in getting the policy to adhere to the science. And I know that's been, just an ongoing conflict, but I think we have heard how that can be done, and whether it's successful or not is something to be seen.
All right, and how do you think we're doing at communicating this evidence-based health to the public? I feel like, Kate, you can speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is something we talk about each day, right? Each and every day. At the local level, we are working with community organizations to make sure, and this kind of speaks to some of what Jo was referencing in her earlier answer, working with organizations to make sure that we're communicating messages in plain language as best we can, making that language accessible, not only just in terms of kind of complicating or just getting like the jargon out of the messaging, but also making sure it's available in different languages spoken within each community. So for us in Madison and Dane County, that's making sure all of our messaging is in English and Spanish and Hmong, and also making sure those messages are culturally relevant. So, and that is really where we lean on our community partners and where the work that we've done in building relationship is paying off, and that we're still working in building trust and relationship with community organizations to be able to get this messaging out. I think there are two main challenges that we are running up against right now. One, as I mentioned earlier, the science is evolving. It is changing, which means that our messaging and our guidance is changing as well. And that creates a lot of confusion for folks. And so to be as clear as possible that we are communicating and basing our decisions about what we know to be true at this moment in time, and then just repeating those messages to help them sink in. The second main challenge that we're finding in messaging is that there really is mixed messaging coming from leaders at various levels of our state and federal governments. We have folks in positions of power and public trust who, and authority that are contradicting science. That makes it extremely challenging for the guidance to get through to help folks protect themselves from coronavirus. So for example, something that we've learned locally and also that we've heard from counterpart agencies across the country is that as states and municipalities have opened back up, you have a lot of folks who will test positive for coronavirus because they've been out they've had a family gathering, they've been to a bar, something like that. And particularly for those folks that have been exposed to the virus in those public places, after reopening, they'll communicate with the contact tracers, those folks who are following up with and trying to determine who you've been in contact with if you have tested positive for coronavirus. They'll tell our contact tracers that, if a place is open, we assumed it was safe to go. And so you hear that in kind of some of the states in the Sun Belt that are currently experiencing a huge spike in cases. Like, we assumed it was safe if things were back, that if things were open, it would be safe for us to go out and enjoy what we like to enjoy. So that's been proving really challenging.
Great.
It's the conflicting messages coming across different levels.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience. So we're going to move over to those questions for now. And so first, the audience is interested in how you became interested in science policy and what was one of your biggest challenge or biggest success in your career so far. So Joe, if you want to start.
Was the first part how I got interested in science policy? I didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I didn't think I was interested in science policy when I got a call from the White House saying President Obama would like you to come to be director of the science division at OSTP. And I didn't have to say, now what's that? I did actually know, but just barely. And I said, I can't even imagine why you would invite me to a place that has policy in its name. I don't know anything about policy. And over the series of course of a few weeks, they convinced me to consider it, which I was not going to consider the position at all at first, convincing me that there are plenty of people in Washington and in the White House who know how to turn ideas into policy, but what they need was the scientific expertise and the ideas about what you can do with science and what kinds of policies would make sense. And then others could translate that into politically viable options for policy. What I realized only afterwards is that I had been involved in policy in small ways on committees that looked at science education policy, antibiotic policy, reports by the National Academy that I had worked on topics like microbiology and metagenomics, that all of those actually fed into policy. Those are the documents that many policymakers use. And they're looking to the scientists for these expert reports. And so getting involved in expert reporting is a very important way of contributing to policy, whether you ever go beyond that or not. So I discovered I did have an interest in policy, even though I was pretty sure I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, and for me, I have always been interested in health sciences, and coming up and going to undergrad, I think my mental model of what that looked like was really a clinical care setting. And so was pursuing the pre-med track, taking those kind of hard sciences courses. And in my studies, I took a class called Global Health and Socioeconomic Development, which was really my first deep dive into the field of public health. And I was really taken by the impact and the importance of policy, of systems, of how we set up our society on the health of all of us and our communities. So that really kind of shifted my understanding. And in terms of and towards a more a policy focus, I ended up pursuing a master's in public health at the UW and also my master's in public affairs, so that policy component to kind of bolster and strengthen my understanding about how to make change to advance health and address inequities.
Great. You have me feeling so inspired between the two of you. Okay, so the next question, it gets at international science policy, which is actually something we haven't really covered, but I'm sure that you have your informed opinions. So how and why has the US policy not lined up with other countries' policies? And what do you think the international science policy community's response is or should be? So yeah, why isn't our US policy lining up? If you have something more in depth than whether or not the country follows science, and how do you think the international science policy community is reacting?
Well, I can say from being the United States representative and leader of the delegation of the U.S. to many science meetings. So they're like the science ministers of the G20 or the G7, which I attended both of. There are all sorts of subgroups across the world that make policy agreements among countries. That it used to be that the United States was seen as the most forceful and potentially important voice. And I remember being just struck when I went to a meeting in Japan and somebody laid out the problem and then immediately turned to me and said, and what does the United States think? And it was quite an experience to be representing the United States, but fortunately I did have the president's policy with me, so I was able to speak to it. But there was enormous respect for the United States, and that was really gratifying. President Obama was beloved. I think he was actually even more beloved abroad than he was at home. People would just like run up to you, and if they knew you were from the White House, and say, "Oh, what's he like? What's he like?" And they'd want to touch you just because you had touched him. And so he was quite a celebrity abroad, and so the United States science policy was a celebrity as well. Right now, I think science policymakers are either ignoring the United States or just baffled by our contradictory policies, our complicated, sometimes nonsensical policies that contradict the science. So I think the world is kind of shocked by the United States not carrying its load in science.
Yeah, and I think also what's happening right now is a demonstration of how powerful some of those other competing factors are in influencing decision making. I think sometimes I know when, reflecting on my time at the university, kind of in academia, it is really clear. It's like, well, here's the science. Why don't we implement this? It's an easy answer, right? It makes sense. But what we run up against is all of these other political realities, economic realities that really make the implementation of a science-based policy less feasible. And I think kind of as advocates for science policy, we do a disservice to ourselves when we don't take those other realities into consideration when we're forming our arguments. Because if we come to decision makers and ask for a science-informed and science-based policy to be put into place where they're having re-election pressures in the back of their head, and we don't articulate our argument addressing what is kind of top of mind for that decision maker, we're not going to get very far in terms of how we implement the policy. So I think it's a really unfortunate demonstration, because it's really consequential of these competing factors that get in the way of us being able to implement science-based policy.
Great. We're starting to run short on time, but we did have a couple of questions on getting involved in policy. And we will be sending resources out to anyone who provided their email, so you don't have to scribble anything down. One question was, how do we or a person provide direct feedback to policy or on policy, and should we focus our efforts on the local or the federal level?
First part is just to reach out to offices, and I talked about this before, going to your local congresspeople and senators if you want to affect at the federal level, and talking to the aides in their office or writing emails. They all have websites where you can post comments about policy. One of the things that is a little surprising is on most policies how little feedback our leaders get at, particularly at the federal level. They just don't hear from very many constituents. So your voice can be very loud just because there aren't very many other voices there. And I don't really have, I can't make a general statement about local versus federal. I think it depends on where you want to have an effect, how much of an effect, and who you want to affect. If you want to affect your community and how it is handling COVID-19, for example, then I think local makes more sense. If you want to affect climate change policy at an international level, then clearly the federal level makes more sense.
Yeah, agreed. It is really kind of thinking about what your passion is and what you are advocating for, and then exactly as Joe said, to kind of target the appropriate entity, kind of level of government that does deal and has decision-making authority in that arena.
Great. Okay, so final questions before we finish up this panel discussion. In advance, we asked each panelist to prepare some answers for some take-home message questions. And so the two that I wanted to pose to you two are, based on your expertise, what is one policy or institutional change that needs to happen right now to move us in a good direction? And then also, as we're living through this pivotal moment in history where racial injustice and COVID-19 issues are energizing the public, how do we leverage this energy to start addressing those long-standing problems?
I think the first one is easy. I think we need a national and many local policies on wearing masks. It's the one activity that we know will make a difference in contagion of COVID-19. Social distancing is also great, but it's a little harder to legislate. And if everyone wore a mask, the numbers would simply go down. So that would be my one policy. And in terms of, what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
It was a long one. How do we leverage the energy?
Oh, yeah.
As everyone is being.
I think in every science policy issue that we come up with, we need to immediately be bringing into it the equity issues. And that has not always been done. And I think if the public and the public officials have that responsibility and are constantly reminded of it, that you need to think about this not just from the majority population or your constituents, but what about the people that you don't normally consider in your policy? I think that will become more of a norm. And we are at a turning point where I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, and for me, it's funding public health. That is the institutional change that needs to happen to get us to a different state. You know, the state of Wisconsin consistently ranks at the bottom of all 50 states in terms of investment in public health per capita. And that needs to change. We have gotten an influx of dollars from the Federal CARES Act to address the immediate need in the COVID response. Those dollars expire on December 31 of 2020. We know that this is going to be here moving forward, so we need to be able to have some assurances from the federal government that that funding can be continued and we can use and have access to additional funds to plan our response and then recovery well into the next year. I think that COVID has shown a bright light on a lot of the vulnerabilities we have as a society. And we're seeing that with the kind of uprisings and the protests as it relates to racial inequities and violence from police. Public health as a discipline works to address the upstream factors, as I mentioned kind of right as we kicked off, that can move us into a different direction. We can work on housing, we can look at employment, we can work at education. And so with that investment of public health, we can move from a reactive place to a more generative place and a more inclusive place. To seize this energy in this moment, we as government officials need to be authentic and genuine when we show up in relationship with community members. We have a lot of new folks that want to talk to us, engage with us, and so we need to listen, be humble, and know that trust building takes time, but we need to show up over and over again each day doing the right thing to move us toward a more just society.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Joe and Kate, for taking time to be with us tonight and sharing your expertise as part of this panel. I know I learned a lot. I know the audience learned a lot, or they wouldn't have asked such good questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. A great panel. Thanks, Joe and Kate. A lot of great insight from there. The biggest thing I think that we can do is go out and vote. Wisconsin primary is coming up August 11th, and a big general election, I don't know if you heard about this, is November 3rd. So go out and vote, everyone. Kate and Joe, we're giving you, all right, I know everybody, you can't hear them, but everybody's getting clapping on.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that concludes the panel session of the night. We're going to be moving on to our last science trivia session. This is another plug to register for science trivia if you haven't done so already. And for those of you tuning in on Facebook Live, due to some licensing with the music that's going to be playing during the second trivia session, we'll be cutting out the Facebook Live stream now. If you want to join on Zoom, you still can to check it out. Let's see. For the rest of us, we'll again give you a few minutes to grab some beer or use the restroom or register your team if you haven't done so already. And Amy will again take over for trivia for another hour or so, and I'll see you guys after that. Good luck, everyone.
All right, hi, hello. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. Yes, you have time for a beer run or whatever you need to do, as long as it's just to the fridge. But in the meantime, quick ask for some of you who have not been with us yet, or maybe you are not named the name that you signed up as. Like maybe your Zoom name is a different name than your actual name that you signed up under for trivia. Please shoot the panelists a quick message if that is the case, or just rename yourself if you can to your, to your actual name, so that way I can make sure that I know who is on which team and getting ready to go. This is specifically for team captains. Some of you I haven't seen yet, so welcome. Some of you are back from the 7 p.m. Love it. Thank you for being here. I'll give you just a couple more minutes and then we're going to get started. Thank you. All right. I feel like we are pretty good to go if you guys are ready. So you know how the game is played, but some of you are joining us for the first time. So hi, thanks. Hopefully you were able to read the instructions on how to play the game, but it's super simple. I'm going to give you a question and you're going to answer it. Just go ahead and send your answer to the panelists. And oh, hi, Alex. Send your answer to the panelists. Don't worry about throwing any point value or anything on it because each question is going to be worth 1 point until the final question, which we'll go into detail later. Hi, Spacebars, welcome back. Hollywood Upstairs is back. I love it. Hi, guys. So here's the thing. Want to make sure that you know a couple things real quick. Number one, please make sure that you are getting your answers in before I start reading the question to give you the answer. Some of you are getting got a little lax in the last game, we'll say. So make sure we're getting those answers in. I do give you a heads up on your time limit. Then also, let's talk about the winners of the last game. Because it definitely had some of those. We did have some ties, but fortunately we have some well-deserving teams that are going to take home, or actually they're not taking them home, they're being sent to them, some really cool non-surgical 100% cloth or cotton, cloth masks. They are really cool. I want one, so jealous. Trivia Newton-John is taking home masks. Trivitriol is JJ's Diner, RuPauli Frax, and med students. Everybody on those teams, you guys are going to get an email about how we are going to get those masks to you, but congratulations. Nice job. For those of you didn't quite make the grade, hey, you've got another chance right now. So we're gonna get into it. Also, this round, you know, last one was, gosh, where am I? There we go. Hi. Earth, Water, Air, Fire was the last game, and this game's theme is rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. So I'm gonna shoot right now. Good luck, you guys. Question number one, dinosaurs probably weren't very logical or able to make complicated decisions because they were significantly lacking in which part of the brain involved with planning and problem solving? One more time, dinosaurs probably weren't very logical or able to make complicated decisions because they were significantly lacking in which part of the brain involved with planning and problem solving? I will put that in the chat so that way you can see it. And your song is, or your time starts right now. Good luck. All right, so far so good, right? Question number one, dinosaurs probably weren't very logical or able to make complicated decisions because they were part of, or they were significantly lacking in which part of the brain involved with planning and problem solving? That is either the frontal lobe or neocortex. I would accept either one, frontal lobe or neocortex. So next up, with a chemical symbol derived from the Latin for water, silver, what element has been found in Egyptian tombs dating back to 1500 BC? One more time. With a chemical symbol derived from the Latin for water, silver, what element has been found in Egyptian tombs dating back to 1500 BC? All right, let's talk about it. With a chemical symbol derived from the Latin for water, silver, What element has been found in Egyptian tombs dating back to 1500 BC? Correct answer is mercury, also known as quicksilver. Either one works out, mercury or quicksilver. So let's talk about, plants. A plant native to South America. What was the first discovered local anesthetic? Again, a plant native to South America. What was the first discovered local anesthetic? All right, let's see, what do we have here? Lots of great answers, that's what we've got. So a plant native to South America. What was the first discovered local anesthetic? I'll accept one or two answers because the plant is the coca leaf. And of course, the first discovered local anesthetic was cocaine. So coca leaf or cocaine would be acceptable answers here. Let's get, nice. Let's get into this question. At roughly 65%, what is the most abundant element in the human body by mass? Again, at roughly 65%, what is the most abundant element in the human body by mass? At roughly 65%, what is the most abundant element in the human body by mass? Correct answer is oxygen. Hydrogen is 62% of all atoms in the body, but only 9.5% of all mass. Carbon is 18.5% of the mass of the body, but oxygen brings in at 65%. That's our correct answer. Going off of that, here's your next question. At roughly 1 to 2%, what is the most abundant mineral element in the human body? Again, at roughly 1 to 2%, what is the most abundant mineral element in the human body? Interesting question. So, at roughly 1 to 2%, what is the most abundant mineral element in the human body? Looking for calcium. Calcium. So we're going to move on to round 2 now. In round 2, in charge of the management of 25% of federal land, including the nation's 154 national forests and 20 national grasslands, the U.S. Forest Service is part of what governmental department? Again, in charge of the management of 25% of federal land, including the nation's 154 national forests and 20 national grasslands. The U.S. Forest Service is part of what governmental department? In charge of the management of 25% of federal land, including the nation's 154 national forests and 20 national grasslands. The U.S. Forest Service is part of what governmental department? The U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's right. It's the only major public land management agency in the U.S. government that's not run by the U.S. Department of the Interior. Little tricky there. Let's go to the next question. Laureates Marie Curie, Frederick Sanger, Linus Pauling, and John Bardeen share what Nobel-related distinction? One more time. Laureates Marie Curie, Frederick Sanger, Linus Pauling, and John Bardeen share what Nobel-related distinction? Let's see how you guys did on this one. Probably my favorite question of the night, I'm not gonna lie. Laureates Marie Curie, Frederick Sanger, Linus Pauling, and John Bardeen share what Nobel-related distinction? They have been honored by Nobel Prizes twice. They are double honorees. Such a great question. Love, love, love. So let's go to the next one, which is also fine, but it's not about Nobels. The letter E is used to symbolize the base of the natural logarithm and is sometimes referred to as Euler's number after mathematician Leonard Euler. Mathematician and author Paul Erdos also has a famous number associated with his name that measures what? This was a mouthful, so I'm going to put it in the chat for you to see. The letter E is used to sometimes symbolize the base of the natural logarithm and is sometimes referred to as Euler's number after mathematician Leonard Euler. Mathematician and author Paul Erdos also has a famous number associated with his name that measures what? All right, I wouldn't have done this, but it's fine. It's not about me. It's not about me. So the letter E is used to symbolize the base of the natural logarithm and is sometimes referred to as Euler's number after mathematician Leonard Euler. Mathematician and author Paul Erdos also has a famous number associated with his name that measures what? It measures collaborative distance. So it measures the collaborative distance between an author and Erdos. So his direct co-authors have Erdos number 1, theirs have number 2, and so on and so forth. Erdos himself has Erdos number 0. So, wow, one team actually managed to get that, which is crazy. I don't know what you're drinking over there, but you either need more or less of it. I can't tell which. So let's move on. Wow. Helped to lead a ban of the pesticide DDT in the United States. Rachel Carson published what book in 1962? Again, helped to lead a ban of the pesticide DDT in the United States. Rachel Carson published what book in 1962? Oh my gosh, okay. Love this. Surf and AstroTurf. Rachel, you are good, I promise. Everything is perfect. We're drinking. You're allowed to typo. It's all good. Helped to lead a ban of the pesticide DDT in the United States. Rachel Carson published what book in 1962? It is entitled Silent Spring. Silent Spring, not Poison Squad, not Silent Spray, not It's Killing Everything, not Health and Families. You guys are fun though. We need to keep doing this. So let's get into, got a couple more questions and then we'll do the final question of the night. Yeah? Yeah. According to a 2017 Nature analysis, examining 39 million research papers across the 12,000 journals in the Web of Science database, approximately what percentage of scientific papers published between 1900 and 2015 have 0 citations? Plus or minus, I'll give you like plus or minus 5% on this. According to a 2017 Nature analysis, examining 39 million research papers across the 12,000 journals in the Web of Science database, approximately what percentage of scientific papers published between 1900 and 2015 have 0 citations? Like I said, I'll give it to you plus or minus 5%. Okay. According to a 2017 Nature analysis examining 39 million research papers across the 12,000 journals in the Web of Science database, approximately what percentage of scientific papers published between 1900 and 2015 have 0 citations? I said I'd give it to you plus or minus 5%. If you wanted to hit it right on the head, it is 21%. 21%. So if you said 16% to 26%, then the points are yours. If you said And I quote 26.94652. I'm sorry, that rounds to 27. Let's get into the final question of the night. But before we do that, just want to give a shout out to everybody who helped organize this event, and also our main sponsor. Our primary sponsor is Research America. So huge shout out to them for being so flexible as everything got rescheduled and we were able to have a really great evening together here online. So thank you for all being a part of it too. Just a reminder, if you have not registered for this event, you're just playing and having a great time and whoa, I won something, cool. But we need your email address so that way we can get in touch with you to make sure you get it. So please stick around. I will have the winners readily available. So you let me know if you need to give us an email address. Just go ahead and shoot it to the panelists and then we're good to go. Again, those masks are super cool. They're, like I said, I'm so jealous. 100% cotton, non-surgical masks. They are the prizes to the top 3 teams tonight. If for some reason the top 3 teams have a couple masks left over, then maybe we'll give out some more. We'll keep you informed on that. But first, let's give that final question. The way it works is that it is a question that has a number as the answer. The team that is closest on the number line to the correct answer will be awarded 3 points. The second closest team gets 2 points, and the third closest team gets 1 point. Then no more points, not even decimals. So here's your final question. A 2015 follow-up paper about the about the discovery of Higgs boson by the 2 collaborations of particle physicists that published the 2012 results is notable for being the paper with the most number of co-authors. How many co-authors are on this 2015 paper? Again, a 2015 follow-up paper about the discovery of Higgs boson by the 2 collaborations of particle physicists that published the 2012 results is notable for being the paper with the most number of co-authors. How many co-authors are on this 2015 paper? You get 2.5 minutes for this one. Good luck. All right, I have that completely scored. Now I get to see who won stuff. Let's see, who won things? Cool. So I think I have it completely figured out. But in the meantime, want to, again, give a huge shout out and thank you to to Research America. Thank you so much for CaSP for having me here and for putting this amazing event on. And thanks for all of you guys for hanging out tonight too. Hopefully you had a good time. So your final question, I love this question because I had no idea. This is insane. A 2015 follow-up paper about the discovery of Higgs boson by the 2 collaborations of particle physicists that published the 2012 results is notable for being the paper with the most number of co-authors. How many were there on this 2015 paper? Well, only the first 9 pages in the 33-page article describe the research itself, including references. The other 24 pages list the authors and their institutions. That comes to 5,154 authors. Whoa. 5154. So closest there to the correct answer was the Erlenmeyer flasks, then Surf and AstroTurf was close too, and then Hollywood Upstairs Medical College got a point for that as well. Yeah, of course, everybody wanted to put a, 5-1 or a 5-0 in front of their answer. I love all of your sense of humor. I've been having so much fun with you guys tonight. So cheers. Rose, you're awesome. So let's talk about who won stuff. Erlenmeyer flasks, you guys won some masks tonight. Nice job. Surf and AstroTurf. Yes, I'm looking at you guys as well. And the Bosons, nice job. Also winning masks, because we have a little bit more to go around, Laser, I Barely Know Her. Awesome. So thanks, you guys. If there are more masks to give away, we will be in touch, but those 4 teams definitely are walking away with some tonight. So thank you much. Hope you have a great night. Take care.
Thank you, Amy. That was a great time. A lot of those questions were tough. I didn't even know them, and I'm a trivia connoisseur. I like to myself. But good job to everyone involved. Thank you, Amy, for a fun time. Thank you, everybody, for participating in trivia. That's all we have for tonight for you folks. We'd be grateful if you could fill out the short 10-question event survey that we'll post in the chat in a second. If you need to send us any emails regarding the trivia, we'll send you some information on how to get your information to us so we can send you the prizes. In regards to the patenting competition that was earlier in the night, we had some submissions about different patent ideas, and the winner was an anonymous entry, regarding a social distancing barrier around us. I recommend that you go check it out on our Facebook event page. There's some really good entries. My personal favorite is the 5 o'clock anywhere clock, 5 o'clock somewhere clock, excuse me. They're really good ones. Check it out. But yeah, again, fill out that survey. A random survey taker is going to receive a prize. And again, look out for any other emails regarding trivia and whatnot. Thank you again to Research America for sponsoring this and letting this happen. Children's Museum for helping us plan it. CaSP and all of our presenters and panelists and Premier Trivia for helping us out with the trivia. And thank you, all of you, for attending. I will be having one more beer to celebrate a successful evening. And we'll sign off by saying stay safe, spread love, and have a wonderful night. Thanks, guys.